the truth that stands true for you in 2020 is not what was true for you earlier, although that was part
Mm.
of the process that brought you here. Uh, One of the questions running in my head, hearing you speak, was it's very nice that you gave it a science, but as human beings, we are also emotional and feeling beings by nature.
Mm.
And so my question to you, which you actually in a way connected with the last line of yours when you said it is confronting and comfortable at the same time. Uh, we are rigged with doubt and fear, and we crave acceptance and
Mm.
belonging to the people whom we care for or whom
Mm.
we want to be cared for. Uh,
Mm.
be them thousands of people or 10 people in your family and friend circle, we crave acceptance of a certain sort. And
Mm.
because of which these underlying emotions of fear and doubt creep in every now and then. Besides which, creative by itself is a process uh, that challenges the very being of who you were prior to this. Uh,
Mm.
I want to bring in a small episode that happened. I was lucky to meet a monk from the forest tradition, Ajahn Jayasaro, last year. And
Yeah.
Ajahn Jayasaro has been one of the more well-known monks who learned under Ajahn Chah.
Mm.
And Ajahn Chah has ensured that they will never go and give a speech which is prepared in advance. So when I heard his speech, maybe fortunately or unfortunately, I had heard so much of him and I had read so much of it, I almost knew everything that he had said before. So I got an opportunity of a one-on-one with him for
Oh,
a
wow.
for a brief few moments. And one of the questions I asked him was, when you are not allowed to prepare, how is it that this speech sounds so much like uh, what you have spoken earlier? He said the funny part is that the audience speaks to me. I
Yeah.
I may have a basic idea of what I want to say,
Yeah.
at least the beginning of it. And when I sit there and I'm about to start, sometimes the converse, what I am saying, even if it's one-sided, it kind of moves in one direction, even if I do not want it to move in that direction. It takes me
Mm.
where it wants to take me, and then there are certain few things that I definitely want to cover because those are very close to my heart. They have
Mm-hmm.
worked for my experience, so those are things that I'll bring in. So, for example, maybe the I am just thinking aloud. I don't really remember the example he gave me, but say the five precepts he wants to bring in, how important they are to practice, or the understanding of the Four Noble Truths, so stuff like that.
Mm.
Those are things that worked very well for me, and I want to kind of, it's his way of giving away the goodness
Mm.
that is found in them.
Mm.
I found that very fascinating. Instead of getting perturbed about a question which kind of asked how you say you don't prepare, but it sounded like prepared, he did not take it like that. He understood the spirit of my question
Mm.
and was flexible enough to give me an answer which completely blew me off in terms of my own strength that I draw even in the podcast. The
Mm.
idea of going impromptu came just because I'd spoken to him and I felt if it is possible for one human being to go out with good intent and succeed, with a little bit of hiccups here and there, we too can succeed.
Mm.
So now my question to you uh, is it necessary to have that sense of understanding about emotional loss of freedom? When we have fear, when we have doubt, there's no emotional freedom anymore. We are now getting very stuck about our point of view, which again
Mm.
leads to not allowing the letting go process to happen.
Mm.
My question is, when you have drawn this science, it sounds very good and fascinating. But when those kind of feelings arise, and if they have arisen in you at some point of time, like I'm sure as a creative person, there must be days that you are clear in your head that something needs to be done about this, but you don't have the answer.
Of
And
course.
have kind of maybe call the audience or call somebody who is going to listen to you, and you're not ready.
mm,
If that is the scene, how do you deal with it? How do you deal with the fear and doubt when it arises, in spite of your open-mindedness? Because at that point, you've got to be humble. You don't know the answer, surely. It's no longer a intellectual thing.
of course. So the simplest answer is of course fear and doubt sees me all the time. However, fear and doubt come and they go, and it's if I have a day when things are not going well, let's say creatively, digitally, because of course to play is a physical thing as well. Um, I'm fortunate enough to have had my practice be there as a constant companion for the last now 17 years. And through that and having this as a kind of, really as a companion, I now see that, yes, this fear and this doubt, they will pass. And so even if it's very personal fear and very personal doubt about my worth as an artist or about my worth as a son or a friend or any of these things, I have learned to trust that there is another phase beyond the fear and the doubt. And I somehow want to bring that back to spontaneity, because I think that you mentioned this Ajahn Sario, is that his
Yes,
name?
sir.
Yeah. So my brother, as I'm sure we've spoken about, my brother lives in Bangkok, actually, in Thailand.
Oh,
And yes, and my brother speaks Thai, and my brother, of course, introduced me to Vipassana um,
okay.
18 years ago before I began sitting. And so through him, I have actually listened to some discourses of Ajahn Sario as well, and I'm aware of this tradition of not preparing Dharma talks, but being able to extemporize. And this thing which you talk about of getting something back from one's audience, in a way, this is also an understanding, I think, that you are not the one giving the talk, actually.
Oh,
The content which you are producing, in a way, the flow which you are producing is actually being channeled through you. You are in a position, one is in a position of being almost like an antenna. There is a kind of, there is knowledge, there is mere knowledge, there is mere creativity, there is mere sound. And at that moment, for whatever reason, one is in the position to channel this. But in that sense, one is less of an active participant than one would normally think. So the monk giving the Dharma talk, it's not his Dharma talk. The Dharma is actually talking through him.
yeah.
That is also why the audience being there is so important, because they become part of that unique moment. I do feel similarly as an improviser when I improvise music. I certainly improvise differently based on the context. Each moment is unique, and stepping away from how do I say that? Stepping away from fear and doubt in those moments where you are in front of a public, a paying public who has paid to see you, and of course you want to perform and you want to do your best, but you actually, I have found this understanding that actually if I think of myself as merely being a channel, a conduit, an antenna, that honestly helps my understanding of the process, because I don't think, well, where did that idea come from? I accept that the idea is there. There's something happens, it flows out. And once it's gone, it's gone. You know, you don't judge its passing. Um, yeah, at the risk of going on too long, I will just add one more point, which I find very interesting. There is a kind of memory that I have as a performer when I'm improvising, which is to say no memory at all. I can never, ever recall the musical content of what I have improvised afterwards. It's completely stricken from my short and long-term memory. However, when I play someone else's music, I have a kind of hyper-engaged memory where every single moment of a performance of, say, a Mozart piece, I will remember exactly how I played it. I mean, it's a slight exaggeration perhaps, but the memory is extremely strong. I will remember, well, in the 30-second bar on the third beat, I played the F sharp a little bit more bright than I normally would. And the opposite is true when I'm improvising. The opposite is true when I'm that channel. It completely flows through me without any kind of indentation on my memory at all. I suspect that I'm far from alone in improvisers in having this experience, because I think that the art of improvising in itself requires you to be in the moment so much that you're not judging the past and you're not thinking about the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a couple of thoughts on that, what you just said. The first